Good evening, friends and family. So, good evening, everyone. It is another episode of the Hillbilly Think Tank coming at you live from here in Tunnel Hills, Elizabethtown, Kentucky. How you guys doing? I'm going to talk tonight about a couple things. One of the big ones is about the opioid epidemic, and are we really heading off to take a little excursion down south for the reasons that we're being told? Like everybody to tell me what they really think about that. Are we being sold a bill of goods, or are we really going down to Venezuela for preventing, fentanyl from entering this country? Now, we'll back up a little bit. Back in the middle of, or the early part of the conflict to fight terrorism in Afghanistan, and then later, of course, it became Afghanistan, the war in Afghanistan and elsewhere. I got a lot of training in pain management on the battlefield. For years, we had simply given combat corpsmen or combat medics um, morphine syringes, right, and stylets for them to inject into injured servicemen and women when they're injured on the battlefield. We all had training in that, became proficient at it, but in the heat of combat, or if you got blood all over your hands, you're nervous, it can become a bit tricky to load a stylet with, syringe to inject into someone. Matter of fact, when my little brother Kelly, who was a combat medic, lost his leg and hand in Afghanistan, no one was prepared for their medic to get blown up and have to receive some morphine. They didn't want to give it to him. He had to talk his platoon commander through the steps. The guy, according to Kelly, guy messed up one of the stylets, and had to reload. Finally, got one into him, but he was in some serious, serious pain. Like I told you guys, my youngest brother, Matthew, you might have heard him describe it here on the show. When he saw Kelly, because they were both in the same area of operation, the same unit. When he saw Kelly right after Kelly got hit, one whole half of Kelly's body looked like it was charred brisket, according to Matthew. If you ever smoked a brisket, you know what I'm talking about. That would be a heinous look on a human. Hey, looks great on a side of brisket, but not when it's your brother you're looking at. So Kelly really needed that pain management for him to make it from where he was blown up and take that helo ride, the medevac, to the main battalion aid station where our brother Matthew just happened to go meet him at. Not just happened to, part of the story, someone, let Matthew know he needed to head down there. Well, right about the same period, right before that, and then right after that, with my team, with MARSOC, we were using and being issued fentanyl lollipops. So instead of carrying those syringes into the field, using fentanyl as a lollipop you could put sublingually in someone's mouth, for them to slowly suck on, or for it to slowly dissolve, in the field, was something that became standard issue, at least for special operations, combat corpsmen and medics. Well, I bring that up because, since that time, there's become this hysteria over fentanyl. Like, oh my God, if you get even near it and touch it, you're going to have cardiac arrest and go into shock. Bunch of load of bullshit from what I've seen. But for some reason, this is what, bill of goods we've been sold. Now, is fentanyl, does it turn out to be highly addictive? Hey, apparently so, because we've got a crisis, right? But hey, I see you there, Isabella. Cool to see you there tonight. Fortnight, bro. Hi. Good to see you there too. So yeah, back to my story. Battlefield. So instead of having to load those syringes and those stylets to inject morphine, we started being issued fentanyl lollipops in the spec ops community. So now, later, after my brother was going through treatment and recovery in Washington, D.C., he was being taken care of, at the Army hospital there. And when I go visit him, I was always amazed. He just refused any opioids that were pushed his way by the military medical staff. He just kept saying he did not want to get addicted to opioids. And so he would do anything he could not to use opioids, not to manage his pain with opioids. Would talk to other vets there. They would acknowledge, hey, a lot of them were still hanging out there because they had a lot of pain and they knew that's where they could get their opioid prescriptions regularly filled. Now, that brings us to another thing. What do you do for folks who have been severely injured in combat and for the rest of their life, they're going to have pain that's just not going to go away? So what do we need to do? What should we do? What are other options? And are there problems with using fentanyl in spec ops? From what I understand now, there's another similar medication that's being issued as a lozenge that can be given. There are problems with some troops who would get that and they would bite down on it, the lollipop, bite down on it, swallow it. I've heard of problems like that. I never did run into that, but yeah. But again, the basic thing is, are we getting folks hooked on opioids that, and they have trouble getting off of them? Now, once I retired and I was working in the VA, I noticed, man, yeah, a lot of vets they got injured in the military and they got hooked on the opioids, through treatment, post injury for those years that they were in recovery or months, whatever it took. Still, they got hooked on opioids. And then once the VA realized, oh man, we've got a crisis, then they're like, oh, we've got to get all these folks off of it. Well, they were just making folks go off of it cold turkey and then expecting them not to go out on the street to look for something that they weren't providing a way for them to have an out and to get off of it. So that's when I first saw medicinal marijuana be something useful for veterans. They didn't want to be on the opioids. They still had pain they needed to manage. And there in Montana, when I lived there, they had just approved medical marijuana dispensaries. Once I left there, they were actually gone to recreational marijuana. But those medical marijuana dispensaries were actually providing an outlet for a lot of veterans that had chronic pain that wasn't just going to go away, but they could not spend the rest of their life on the opioids. So hopefully my volume is still good. If anyone is listening, I just heard, sounds like my speakers here are going down. So let's see if I messed that up. So if anyone can still hear me, hopefully I'm still getting the volume going. So what do? Right? We know that there is definitely an opioid crisis in America. We know that there is a war we're raring to go into now, south of the border, and we're claiming that it's all for this fentanyl problem coming in from there. Well, is that really the truth? I think the Sackler family is the one who got us into this thing in the first place. Besides, veterans getting hooked on opioids, they got folks in Appalachia and other rural areas in Kentucky hooked on it. Right? They told the doctors, "Hey, just come on. People can't get hooked on pain meds if they're having it prescribed for real pain." That's what I was taught in nursing school in the 90s also. You can't get hooked on opioids if you're prescribing them for pain, right? You only get hooked on an opioid if you're using it recreationally. Well, that turned out to be a load of crap, but we developed a whole system. Rate your pain on a scale of 0 to 10. And we were taught everybody's pain is subjective. Always take someone's pain evaluation at what value they say it is. If they say it's a 7, 8, 9, or 10, take it as a 7, 8, 9, or 10 and prescribe pain meds accordingly. Well, that turned out to be just a load of hooey sold to us by Big Pharma. So if we really are going to go after folks that have been pushing opioids and that started this crisis, why didn't we prosecute the Sackler family? Why are they still walking scot-free and living that big trust fund life? That's what I want to know. And it's just back to, hey, we'll give you smoke and mirrors. But we're not going to give you the fact of what's really going on. So 10% of our problem with illicit narcotics comes from Venezuela, at the most 10%. The rest of it's coming from another country that we're not going to go tearing into because they're part of NAFTA. So, let's see. Renaissance Hillbilly here says most people who use are hooked on pain meds, got that way because of back pain or toothaches. And exactly, that's how we got Appalachia and a lot of poor folks hooked on these pain meds. And what did Big Pharma know? Once they got them on those pain meds, who was going to pay for it? The government, right? Easiest way, get Medicaid to pay for it. You got elderly. They've now got aches and pains. Let's get Medicare to pay for it, right? And again, go back to veterans who came through some real trauma, real pain. Let's get them all these opioids, as fast as we can and as long as we can. Now, again, on the battlefield, you need some pain meds for you to get out of there and survive, right? The pain that is going to be traveling with you for half hour, whatever it takes for you to get from where you were initially injured in battle to the battalion aid station. But we've got to come up with something better. We've also really got to hold those folks to account who sold us this horseshit load that we've been swallowing for years, right? But no, we didn't hold the Sackler family accountable. We had a Honduran drug lord, which happened to be the president of Honduras, in jail. He was supposed to serve 45 years for the 400 tons of cocaine he used his military to ship up here. But This current administration just let him off scot-free, gave him a get out of jail card for free, and sent him back to Honduras. And yet we're going to go now and attack a country that at the most is supplying 10% of the drugs. Those boats that we blew out of the water had 11 people on them. You don't have 11 people on little tiny drug speedboats. You have maybe 2 at the most. Someone to steer it and another to help navigate and to talk to the folks on the pier when they tie it up where they're going to offload. You don't need a whole crew of 11. You don't use a whole crew of 11. That's wasting space that they like to use for their product. That's just a sign right there that this is a bunch of hoopla or shit that we are being sold and to speed us into a war for this oil. Now, y'all, I love to drive my wife's truck once in a while when I need to go pick something up because it's a 4-banger, and that little Toyota when I need to go pick up some stuff at Lowe's. Yeah, we'll use her truck. For the rest of the time, I'm using my American-made Chevy EV. Loving it. But what do we have here in America going on right now? Our job-producing state, we have produced so many jobs in the sector of EVs. We've got 3 EV plants, production plants here in Kentucky, but we just sacked them. This big, ugly bill. And what did Mr. Guthrie do just yesterday when he got called out for voting for that big, ugly bill and not ensuring that the EV incentives stayed intact that had been helping out Kentucky for years? Oh, he tried to say that EV wasn't any good and that was just a bunch of liberal nonsense. Well, that liberal nonsense is 1,600 jobs here in Hardin County. I like that liberal nonsense. I liked seeing my neighbors employed and all the surrounding jobs that were being built off of servicing that plant. If we had gone up to the maximum, we're supposed to have 2,100 jobs there at that plant that's now being closed, Blue Oval, as we talked about yesterday. But, hey, we're supposed to forget about that and hoorah, wave our flags as we race down to Venezuela for that oil. Well, boys and girls, it's not about narcotics. And if we have enough people injured in that war, that's going to be folks that they're going to get hooked on opioids too, and then blame them when they are, after the country sent them down to lose legs, arms, hands, lives. So think about that, all right? Think about that as you cheer for this excursion for oil in Venezuela, because that's all it is. If we want to go after the real purveyors, the pushers of opioids, go after the Sackler family, go after Big Pharma, hold them responsible. We held the big tobacco responsible, but here we go again. We adjusted course. We came up with an alternative in Kentucky for tobacco, which used to be king here. Now we've got a lot of people growing hemp. Hemp can be used for ropes, for clothing, and it can be used also to make some beverages for adults. Those beverages, by the way, don't destroy your liver like my other favorite Kentucky beverage, brown liquor. But the hemp-based beverages do provide a smidge of pain relief, unlike what you get from alcohol, and way better than people get from opioids. So remember that, all right? Because it's also not the Democrats that just killed the hemp business in Kentucky. It's our current senator that we have got to get rid of. Well, we know he is heading out, but we can't put in a replacement that will be just like him to keep up his legacy of selling Kentucky hemp farmers down the road, of not helping out our EV production in this state. We've got 3 job producing factories here in Kentucky that were centered on EVs. Hardin County was the largest one. Guthrie and Moscow and Mitch have done nothing to help those. Matter of fact, they pushed back against them all the way. But they want to now blame liberals, Democrats for these job losses? No, I'm not buying it. Neither should you. All right, y'all. Love your neighbor as yourself. I see Eljo Cool there. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. And, we are our brother's keeper. We are our sister's keeper. So as we love our neighbors as ourselves, let's remember this is the season for introspection, being jolly, but also taking care of one another. So God bless your corazón. Have a great holiday season. Merry Christmas. Let's keep on moving forward. The future is now.